Just a couple of guys, a couple microphones, and a heck of a lot of know. It's Football on the Know with Jim and Joe.
What they say, it's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Football on the Know. I am Jim McPhee, alongside of me, Mr. Joe DeCapita.
What's going on, Odos? Welcome back for another edition of Football on the Know Show. Welcome, everyone, one and all. Hey, the trade deadline has been completed. It's been here, it's gone,
Yes,
and
the day
now
has arrived, Joe.
And now we're going to take a look back at a few of the big-time trades, give you our little intel on each one. We're also going to take a look back at last week's games and what transpired there, also give you our game picks as well. But, yeah, we got a fully packed show for all of you out there. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, all the support as well. Do us a huge favor if you're new to the show or if you just want to kind of spread love, tell everybody about our great football community here that we have. Show us all that great support out there. Mm-hmm. Head over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, let you guys know when we go live. Like, share, comment, you name it, just get it done. And you can take us on the way with you, whether you're going to work, just going out driving around, anywhere you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, you name it.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. And you talk about it here, the trades and everything that happened. Trade deadline hits up. One of the biggest ones I think so far that has got people talking is what's Washington's doing. You know what I mean? You're hearing what's coming out of Washington, and not only that it's something that the GM's looking to do, or even like a Ron Rivera type of thing to kind of retool the team here.
Yeah.
But we're hearing that this is an executive decision right straight from the top here in ownership. And we heard about talks from early on around trade time that it was going to be Montez Sweat or possibly Chase Young. Both of them go here. But let's first talk about Chase Young. Now he's traded to the San Francisco 49ers. The Washington Commanders will receive a 2024 third-round pick for that. So not too bad. Again, you see, I think that's probably good, a third-round pick here for him, even though, he's been a pretty good pass rusher for them, but really hasn't hit double-digit sacks since 2020, where he ended up winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. But this year kind of looks like he's finally coming back. But the only thing for him, as you know, was injuries and stuff. And that's why I think the value had lowered for him. But now you see San Francisco, they're trying to load in like they did last year when doing that trade for Christian McCaffrey, and the rich get richer. And now they're trying to move forward here and help that defense out here.
Yeah, and you got to kind of wonder with this whole situation here. They do obtain Chase Young, great for them. But Chase Young, like you mentioned, has been heavily injured over his short career and very young career for that matter. Currently this season, he's never been healthier, for one, and two, obviously besides 1 year in 2020 when he actually had double-digit games played, now he's looking like he's ranking around fifth. I think he's like fifth place in pressures and quarterback pressures right now, one behind now counterpart Nick Bosa with 41. And this move could have been triggered by a couple different things. Obviously, they needed help more. They wanted more help with the pass rush. They brought in Randy Gregory. Randy Gregory's been okay, but he hasn't been the complete answer that they were looking for. So they pull off this. It is a big move for them. And it's like this is kind of their MO now. It's like right before the trade deadline, they're adding even more talent than what they already have. And last year it was Christian McCaffrey in a big move to get him to go over there to help them with their playoff run. And now this year, you pull off this move here with Chase Young, having him on the opposite side of Nick Bosa, and you got to like this look right now for the front four. So I kind of expect the Niners going forward, this D-line looks on paper, looks amazing. And it was amazing before. I'm not trying to diminish that. But it's almost funny how Seattle made a big move too. And because Seattle's leading the division currently, and with the Niners, recent 3 straight games and losing, they tried to make a move happen because Seattle also made a move for Leonard Williams, and we'll get to that. But because Seattle made this big move for Leonard Williams, I got to wonder that kind of triggered something with John Lynch and the Niners. And, like, we got to make a move, too, because they're ahead of us. We have this 3-game losing skid. We need to add more pass rusher, so let's go get this guy. And hopefully that's the answer that they need. What's interesting about this trade also is they just paid Javon Hargrave a buttload of money to play D-tackle for them. This is a contract year for Chase Young. And if you just got him for the next few months, and then after that he's going to be a free agent, you got to wonder about this kind of move, because it's not like they just gave over a 5th-round pick or a 6th-round pick, and you're going to be like, well, we just missed out on a low-end pick. This is a higher pick. This is a 3rd-round pick that you just kind of gave up. So hopefully they have plans down the road to try to make something work, because cap-wise, it's going to be tight to try to sign him long-term.
All right, we've got Paul Matty in the house with us tonight.
What's going on,
Greetings
Paul?
from the AFU discussion group. Absolutely.
What's going on, buddy?
And probably Playa Linda Beach, Florida as well.
right.
Yeah, I mean, and what you still got, the one thing you got going on for them, though, too, is you got Brock Purdy under his rookie deal still. So even it was, you're thinking that he is on a, last year of his contract. So you think during the season that they're going to figure something out and try and rework it and get something and get a deal done before the end of this whole thing,
right,
and make it work. So then they know what their money situation is. And at this point too, this is probably the best of value that Chase Young has been in the last couple of seasons, again, because of the injuries and stuff. So he's probably going to want to stay as well, too, because you just got traded to a contender. How many of these guys get to say that and you say, hey, all right, I get to go to this team now, trade it? I'll willingly take that. You've got other teams now, they're trying to unload some of these guys, and they'll send them to, the abyss, and they're like, oh, man, you said, like Odell Beckham Jr., when you try to get trade, value for him, when you were the Giants, they bring him to, the Cleveland Browns, and he's like, oh no, you guys sent me to hell, and blah, 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 and this and that. And he still was no good over there either way. But so I think he's in a good position here. They're contender for a good couple of seasons too, as well as long as Brock Purdy stays healthy. And moving forward, we've seen teams like this kind of load up, stack the cards, and also be able to get these getting the money right too as well. So good move by them. I really like what they did, and I think even the value is there. I think it's a pretty even trade. Next that one's going to the Montez Sweat. Now we talked about him now too. So Washington again unloading Sweat here, and they'll get a 2024 2nd-round pick for the Chicago Bears. Sweat right now, he has at least 5 sacks in each of his 5 seasons that he's played here, and right now he's currently 8th with 6.5 sacks this season. But again, pass rusher, something that the Bears have really needed, and Eberflus with that defense, because that's one thing we didn't see even last week. Last week there was the lack thereof, and I think even right now this season, and I think it's under pass pressure, they're only like 28% or something like that, and applying pressure here on the quarterback. So not getting that, and that doesn't help out that defense and that secondary right now, for them. And it's partially why they're losing some of these games, because tell you what, even right now with Badgett that they have in there at the quarterback position, they look pretty good. Even though he's he's only filling in for Justin Fields and stuff like that, but they seem like they got something going on here still. So I mean, that would only help them. But the thing is with him, I think that is different. He's one of the ones that did get traded to a team that is in a losing position right now. That is, they just gave up, that 2nd rounder so next year when they go, and then all of a sudden that 2nd round pick is, especially it's going to be a high pick. So you're hoping that Montez Sweat will re-sign with you in this one too as well and stay with you. Because if you don't, then all of a sudden you gave away that 2nd round pick and he doesn't want to stay, and he wants to hit free agency. So Chicago could have either, it's weird that they pulled the trigger on this unless they thought somebody else was in the running for the trade, that they did it, or they could have just waited till free agency and tried to make a run at him as a free agent and try to get him on here for this. Instead of giving up that pick on top of it.
That's the thing, too, is teams, when they do these trades, it's because they don't want competition to get them. Like, the Bears they're going to have a ton of money. Just like they did this previous offseason. They're going to have a ton of money at their disposal anyway. But And that's probably where the Bears are headed. Ryan Poles, the GM for the Bears, is thinking the same thing. Is they're like, well, we'll pull off, we'll get this trade done. And yeah, it costs a lot. A second-round pick is nothing to bat your eye at. Like, this is something that when you are willing to give up a second-rounder, obviously everyone knows, like, first-rounder is like a big deal, but second-rounder is almost just as big of a deal nowadays in the draft, because you could potentially get yourself another blue-chip player in the second round to just plug and play on your team and become a really good starter for you too. So to give up a second-round pick, they recognize the value of Montez Sweat. He's still in his prime. You know, he's 27 years old, so there's a lot to like. Currently, 6.5 sacks. Pretty good. He's having a pretty good year right now. And this is a much-needed position that they needed, that pass-rushing specialist, and here comes Montez Sweat. So good job on the Bears. And with this, you're not going to turn down a second-round pick for anybody. Like, this is crazy. For them to get a second-round pick on a player that has an expiring contract, and that's kind of where that's the debate, I guess, for me, is Bears gave up a second-round pick over Chase Young. Now, Chase Young was a way more highly touted coming out of college, was supposed to be this dominant D-end, much like a Nick Bosa, but still hasn't lived up to that expectation. Montez Sweat, on the other hand, was drafted a couple rounds later and is seen as this one of the better pass rushers in the league, and now you're giving up a second-round pick on him on a contract year. You better make sure that you sign him before the end of the season. Better make sure this gets done before you even get to the franchise tag window. Before you get it, there should be no chance that this guy is able to leave. And I know that they're not going to want to use a tag. No teams want to use a franchise tag. It just costs too much money for 1 year. So Bears, I think, are going to handle that early on, and they're going to get a long-term deal with Montez Sweat. So obviously the trade will balance out for both teams. It's great work. We got Brandon Degener. Welcome to the show, brother. He goes, a second-round pick from Chicago is huge. Yes, it is huge from Chicago because currently they are in such disarray that they are on the top of the first round. Cardinals, I think, might have just taken that spot, but
at least right now, at this point, their second-round pick is 35th pick overall.
Top three.
So,
yep.
At this point in time right now. So that is big.
Let's just hope that Montez Sweat doesn't help them start winning games, because then that pick might not be as good.
All right, absolutely. So who knows? We'll see with that one. But, I mean, that is the key. You know, you got to be able to lock him in. You know what I'm saying? So that's a lot to gamble on. For them.
I know it's looking way farther down the road, but that also opens up another debate about what does Chicago do with those picks? Because there's been a lot of rumors lately about, is Fields their guy? Are they going to continue with Justin Fields? Or do they take one of those high picks, invest it in a quarterback, trade Fields away, and then kind of restart that whole process? So we'll get to that, but not just yet. It's just something.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing this kind of brings up to me, if it's a decision by ownership and stuff, I think, again, that just says one more thing to me about what they feel with what's going on with Ron Rivera in the season. That tells me that he isn't going to be making any of the decisions, that he probably isn't going to be there much longer. Because if they're going to do something like this to kind of foil the season for him, like because I feel right now they're still competitive. I don't think they're hitting like the reset button right now. They don't really need to. They still have a lot of good weapons there. They still have some good talent. And then you just gave up your two top pass rushers. I think that just is more telling for like what ownership they want to do and move forward and make a big change, I think, with this organization and give somebody different here those picks to do something with, instead of Ron Rivera, again, to do kind of the same of what he's been doing. So I think this is more telling on what his coaching has been doing for the team, and I think they want to go in a new direction altogether.
I think this whole situation is very unorthodox. It wasn't a call by the coaches. It wasn't a call by like the GM. It was a call by ownership. That usually does not happen. You have Josh Harris in his chair basically saying, hey, I don't feel like paying these guys big-time contracts next year. I don't want to pay either one of them, so let's move on from them now. Where there could be coaches in that whole, in that office saying, really? You really want to move on from them? They're good players. They're talented players. We should probably invest in them to keep this train moving along defensively. But Josh Harris didn't want to hear any of that. He wants to change the team and his vision as an owner, and he has that right. But when you have football minds in the room telling you, I'm not really on board with this, like, are you really sure you want to do this? And he says yes, and they pull the trigger on these 2 trades. It's like it's out of the coach's hands. It's out of Ron Rivera's hands. It's ownership dictating what you're going to be doing. So in any way, shape, or form, this is going to reflect heavily on just ownership and nobody else because they didn't have a choice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the ownership, again, can do whatever they want with it. But, when it starts getting crazy, if the fact that the owner starts taking over being the GM as well, we've seen what Jerry Jones ends up doing with the Cowboys. So, absolutely. So, again, one more trade here, too. That was one of the bigger names here. The New York Giants trade away Leonard Williams is traded to the Seattle Seahawks. Joe talked about it a little earlier when we brought up the 49ers. Giants will receive Seattle's 2024 second rounder and a 2025 fifth round picks,
which is conditional.
Yes,
the fifth rounder is.
So I think that's really good for being a Giants fan as well. I mean, you already know my take on Leonard Williams. I thought he was overrated for what we needed to do, and I know some people thought we needed to even re-sign him and sign a deal to him. I would have rather him walked after his first season with us, but he stuck around and still was mediocre. So to get a second-round pick for him, I'm excited about it. So if we can move him on to Seattle, I think Seattle, he'll excel being in that D-tackle situation. It'll help them out, too, as well with that defense, the way they've been playing this season. I think the addition of him, just helps out in that interior for them. And they're surprisingly making a push again this season. This season started off a little sluggish just in the first couple of games, but they're sneakily being right there in the mix with they're at the top of the division here with 5-2. So watch out for Seattle and some of the things they're doing here.
I mean, Seattle looks very dangerous now when you get Leonard Williams. And to be honest with you, Leonard Williams is a really good player. I followed his career. I love him. I loved him in college. This is a good deal for both teams. Like the Seattle Seahawks gave up a second-round pick, and yes, that's nothing to kind of overlook, and to give a fifth-round pick, conditional pick. Here's what the Giants were thinking: is they didn't want to pay big money. Mm-hmm. Bottom line. I mean, this guy is also one of those guys that you're going to have to. It's going to expire. And Seattle, you got to figure something out to re-sign him. You gave a lot of money to Dramont Jones, who a new acquisition for them this past offseason. Jerron Reed is there. And now you bring in Leonard Williams to go with this kind of star-studded defense that's came out of nowhere, really. They've been able to do a phenomenal job adding talent via draft, free agency, and once again, they have a really, really good defense. And then a couple of youngsters in Boye Mafe and Derek Hall, rookie Derek Hall, that they've done a tremendous job adding more talent to this roster. So for Leonard Williams to go to Seattle, he has another chance yet again to maybe he can make a major push with Seattle and they can go deep into the playoffs. Who knows what's going to happen there? But for the Giants, they get to work on the future. This second-round pick is going to be huge for them and much needed. Listen, offensive line help. We've said this numerous times, multiple years we've been saying this. This upcoming draft, the Giants really need to dedicate all resources to finding their next offensive line. Even if you brought in a free agent and then draft a couple of other offensive linemen, that's something that they need to concentrate. And I feel like Joel Shane is recognizing that, and that's why he ended up, obtaining these draft picks, not going to have to pay extra money for them. And what also makes this move a very good move for the Giants, too, is the fact that they have Dexter Lawrence in the middle, along with new acquisition A'Shawn Robinson.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We've got Mike Tackett in the house tonight. Joe, what does he have to say?
Hey, our boy Mike. Welcome to the show, brother. He said Arizona traded their 7th and Josh Dobbs for Minnesota's 6th. Did the Vikings win the trade? Dobbs isn't the entire reason they're 1-7. I think he'll help the Vikings with depth. And this is kind of a fun topic because Josh Dobbs, when he was announced the starter in the beginning of the year, everybody wrote off the Cardinals, first of all. Let's just say what it is. Kyler Murray wasn't going to be able to return in the beginning of the season. They're going to start Josh Dobbs, and you look at the roster, and they're like, well, they're depleted in the interior offensive line. The defensive side of the ball is really spotty. Everybody said the Cardinals were going to lose like every game, basically. Didn't give them any credit. And I will say, like, I'm first to say, like, I was wrong. I was wrong a little bit. The Cardinals, yes, they're not dominant and everything, but they've surprised some people. Their one win is against the Cowboys. And every other game they've played, they've been competitive. They've actually been right in the game until the end. So, yeah, you're right. Josh Dobbs wasn't the complete reason why they were losing, but also he wasn't the reason why they were able to win any big-time games besides the Cowboys. For this trade, I will say this. I'll say Josh Dobbs is going over to add depth for Minnesota. It's a move. It's kind of like a lateral move for Minnesota. They already have guys in-house like Colt McCoy, who we've seen as a backup come in and spot start for teams and do an adequate job. By adding Dobbs, yeah, he's got the mobility and stuff, but again, I still don't think he's going to be the reason why you bring him in, and he's going to be a reason why your season isn't completely lost. You're gonna get right back on track like he's Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's like it's almost like you trade and you get a depth piece. It doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, like you say, even lateral move, but I don't even think it's exactly a lateral move. They needed
lateral
to get
with
somebody,
the guys that were there. That's why it's
somebody
lateral.
on their depth chart, obviously, because the only other person they have dressed here is Jaren Hall at quarterback here in Minnesota. So they needed somebody else here on the depth chart to fill, but you could have went free agency all day on this one. Why trade for a Joshua Dobbs, who, yes, he's been doing okay this season for the Cardinals and stuff, but Minnesota, when they kind of scratch back into this division and have a chance, I think other people, even looking at this, were thinking bigger. They were thinking bigger picture. Who can they get? I mean, there was even rumblings of Tom Brady coming out of retirement to go to them or whatever. People trying to say that. But people were thinking bigger picture and a different quarterback to help get them into a playoff push. This tells me, though, altogether that, for me at least, they just found another guy that maybe you can get something out of him. You didn't give up a whole lot. Plus, you
gave up nothing.
You get absolutely nothing. But you're expecting Kirk Cousins back again this season to go another run. You know what I mean? You believe in Kirk so much, and that you're showing him respect that when he's out and he's out on that Achilles injury, that you're telling him that, hey, Kirk, we believe in you. We feel that you could get us to the next level and get that Super Bowl ring. And I think that we have the team right now, especially when Justin Jefferson comes back and you got him and Addison as your 1 and 2, that they feel like they can just retool and come back next season with a Kirk Cousins on their restructured contract and make another run. So that's why they didn't go out and get another splash QB or, another guy to get them over to the boat, over the ship here and over to where you need to get to. I feel like they just went kind of that lateral to fill a depth spot to get there and see how their season kind of plays out just to feel them out.
And that's the other thing, too, is like, I know everybody wants their teams, like the Jets fans. Like when Aaron Rodgers went down after 4 snaps in, and everyone's
they
like,
wanted to trade for Kirk Cousins.
Let's trade for Kirk Cousins. Let's go and get, try to talk to some other veteran that we can bring in, and is going to keep propelling our offense. It's not realistic, though, because from a business sense, for any team, no team wants to have to give up a lot in compensation or a high-end compensation pick. A first rounder, a second rounder to kind of have a Band-Aid for that year. So for Minnesota, I honestly, it doesn't make much sense, but it does in terms of depth. But again, it's not something that's going to keep you in the game. So you're almost better off starting Jaren Hall. Maybe Josh Dobbs, after he picks up the playbook, is going to be able to get in there. But right now, Hall knows the playbook. He's a rookie. See what he can do. But it's just one of those things where you know, compensation comes into mind. Money comes into mind when you try to obtain a big name. And honestly, who was available? Like, you can say all day, well, we might have been able to trade for, like, you know, somebody that's already a starter. That I don't think so. Right now, it's midway through the season. Nobody's really giving up. You know what I mean? Even Chicago's making moves. You know, Chicago's is, you know, they're one of the teams that are faltering and not being able to do much in the win column. But they're even making big time trades to kind of help their team. So I just think that it was unrealistic to think that they're going to be able to pull off some kind of major trade for a already big time starting quarterback like Matt Stafford. Like if the Vikings were like, oh, LA, hey, what do you want from Matt Stafford? We want him. You know what I mean? Like, nobody is willing to give up a franchise quarterback. Well, you know, unless you're the Raiders.
You're the Raiders.
But that's the big thing here, is that it's so difficult to even consummate a trade that mid-season you're trying to steal a starting type of quarter. It's not going to happen. So Minnesota, it's very unfortunate that Kirk Cousins got injured. He's done for the year this year. Hopefully we'll see him next season as a Minnesota Viking. But again, it is what it is. Like, you're just going to try to make the best of the situation that's here.
All right. John Felton's in the house with us tonight, Joe.
Johnny boy, what's going on? Welcome to the show, bro.
We should have just played our rookie, which I think he might because, again, Josh Dobbs, he's still got to go there, and he's got to learn the offense, too, on top of it all. And so who knows if he does play even, too. It's going to be limited to what he does. And then he also says Kirk can't be replaced. You replace the player, but not the man. That's right. Absolutely. Hey, hell yeah. And you know what? Again, like I said, I felt it after watching the quarterback show, and I think even throughout this season, people's view, I think, on Kirk Cousins, once he opened himself up more to the public, I think kind of really enjoy him and see a different view aside of him and really like the man who he is. And when he went down in that injury, so many heartfelt people along X and or whatever, if that's what they call it right now, and all over social media, just sharing love for him and things like that and wishing him luck and hopefully he can come back and stuff like that. It's been a very emotional.
I mean, obviously Kirk Cousins is well loved as a person. Like that's not even we all know that everyone loves him, but he still gets dogged as a quarterback. That stigma's never gone away. So for Kirk, if you watched him play, especially this year, I feel like this year he really kind of transcended himself into a even better quarterback than he was before. With Kevin O'Connell in this offense, it's actually enhanced all of his talents to the point where he's playing above the clouds. Like he's just absolutely superseding his stats. He's just playing the best he's ever played before. So Minnesota and Kirk Cousins, like, yeah, I get what you're saying, John. Like, you can't replace him because you can't replace a player that's so entrenched in your system and is he's just a franchise quarterback for this team going forward. He's been a dramatic impact in Minnesota. So, of course, Kirk Cousins cannot be replaced just like any other franchise quarterback. But I feel like this is that situation where, unfortunately, Kirk is hurt, done for the year, but now it's time to see what Minnesota can do with an unproven rookie, Jaren Hall, who I happen to like out of the draft class this year from BYU. He was one of my top 10 quarterbacks. I'm rooting for them. I hope he does well. He's not going to be the difference maker that Kirk was, but he doesn't have to be. We've seen this team come together as a unit this season. Offensively, playing definitely better than what we anticipated. And defensively, again, playing better than we anticipated. So maybe this team can kind of keep it together and keep this run going. Just limit mistakes. Whoever's playing quarterback, we obviously, for the time being this week, it'll be Jaren Hall because he already knows the playbook. Josh Dobbs still needs to get in there and learn it quick enough. And then we'll see who's going to, most likely Dobbs will be the starter down the stretch. But it's going to be interesting to see how Minnesota reacts to this. Are they going to say, this one's for Kirk? You know what I mean? And all really like go all in and do everything they could possibly do to keep this thing going? Or are they just going to pack it in?
All right. What does he got? John Felton's lighting it up over there. What does he say?
Johnny goes, I agree that QB showed a totally different side of him. He also said, I'll take Zach Wilson at this point. Billy Zappi, Trey Lance. No, here's the thing is, I understand what you're trying to go with. This guy like Zach Wilson. Well, we already know that Zach Wilson wasn't going to be traded. You know,
the one thing though with Josh Dobbs, he was already on the way his way out the door, like in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? He was as a working for NASA and stuff like that. So he actually just gave it one more shot into the NFL and happened to get cut and then go to the Arizona Cardinals. So that's why he's talking about. I think people that are actually trying to start a career have an upturn rather than what Joshua Dobbs is.
We got Mike in the house. He said, with so many respectful veterans being traded for very mediocre draft picks, are teams undervaluing first and second round picks in lieu of mid-round picks as draft capital? Or do teams prefer mid-round picks as they're more of a value than getting another top 64 pick? What I would say to that is it goes by a case-by-case basis. So your veterans that are getting mediocre draft picks, it's because of their age. It's that simple. They're no longer in their prime. They're seen as at the end of their careers. So the value dips down for a lot of those veterans. Whereas when you see these the high round picks, you know what I mean? Like these second round picks. Like there's two trades before the deadline went through where we saw a second rounder, a third rounder being traded. Honestly, the higher the pick, the more the higher value of that pick it is. So like I don't think there's teams are going say, oh, we want more mid-round picks because it's easier to obtain. But I still think people always want a higher value pick, first, second, third round pick. And that's always kind of usually where they start off at until they come to realization that teams are not willing to give that up so easily. And that's kind of where you see those veterans get a mid-rounder, like a fifth, a sixth, a seventh-round pick. Was it John said, I'm just hurt right now. I miss Kirk. And you should, man. I mean, it's a total bummer that you lose your franchise quarterback at this point in the season where things were turning up for Minnesota. Things were looking good, and they were looking to get right back in the playoff hunt, and then this unfortunate event happens.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mean, I agree with you too, as well as far as the draft picks. Like even in this, in these particular trades right here, I don't see any real mid-range. You got the third or whatever, but that's equal value. I think people are more apt to look at the value of the player and get that true value for them. It's not like whether they deserve or what they think they're going to get out of that presuming round for those teams. And when they get it, like a third, like. I'm sure they're like, hey, I could probably get somebody around that area for what I need, but you want to get the highest value you can possible still. I don't think they're strategically saying, well, let's not go for a second. If I can get that fourth or whatever, I think we can hit big there, No, I think they're going to take whatever they can get.
The high pick.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think it's really part of
and the one thing
strategy you're going to
The one thing I'll say too is like, look at what Leonard Williams got. Like, you know what I mean? The Giants
the Giants got for him.
The Giants got for him is a second round pick. And this is a veteran. This is a guy that's at the, getting up there in age, and they still got a second-round pick for the guy, and possibly more.
And they'll still screw that up no matter what position that they pick in. So
maybe.
So it doesn't matter, right?
We'll see.
You talk about, they want to focus on offensive line. That's what they should do this season.
Yeah.
What do you think they've been doing the last couple of seasons, like 6 seasons? Focusing on offensive line. They have. They've been drafting an offensive lineman every single year, and they just haven't hit on one since even Dexter Lawrence. Andrew Thomas, yes. Since Andrew Thomas.
And that was only a couple of years ago.
It was back like Dave Gettleman's first year, so it was a bit further than that.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing is look at the space there. They really haven't been concentrating high picks on offensive linemen. And that's where you tend to hit more often than not. is when you look at these
Well, then
offensive
what's
linemen
Evan
coming
Neal
out.
then? Evan Neal, they drafted him. There's
Right.
a high pick, and
He just didn't pan out.
Didn't pan out. Yeah.
And so far didn't pan out. Like, I wouldn't say totally like he's never going to be any good, but who knows? Some guys are late bloomers. We've seen it happen before with draft picks. Some guys, and maybe it won't be long enough time with the Giants, and he'll find himself in the free agent wire. He'll go to like somewhere else, and maybe he plays better for some reason, because whatever the reason is, sometimes guys are just late bloomers. And for the Giants, yeah, they've been missing on some of these draft picks, but they haven't really gone all in on these higher graded offensive linemen. They're trying to get away with picking offensive linemen middle rounds and trying to turn them into stars. And a lot of times it doesn't work out, because obviously the ratio of wins and losses in terms of draft picks is not very good. The lower you go down, the harder it is to draft and find a replacement. So for the Giants, yes, they might have been making some kind of effort into finding those pieces, but not at the high-end draft picks where they probably should have. We got John in here. He said Giants need to give up on Danny Dimes, and also said that they had
one big pile of
Gino, and now look at him. I mean, that's nitpicking, though, right? Like, let's think about this from a quarterback's perspective. As Geno Smith, when he came into the league, drafted by the Jets, never panned out in New York, and that could be a multiple of things. It could have been
knowing now what we didn't know then. I mean, yeah, it sure looks like a mistake, but
it looks like a mistake.
Then.
But
Come on,
but we're gonna go back and let's talk about it. Like the Jets, when they drafted him, he was supposed to be the franchise guy. It didn't work out. It could have been a multitude of things. It could have been the offensive scheme didn't work for him. He just wasn't comfortable with it ever. And they didn't really give him a shot in terms of, like, he was only there for a couple years until they were like, well, I don't think he's the answer. Like, they just kind of gave up early on him. And then obviously Geno made his rounds to a couple other teams, and he was seen as a backup at that point until Seattle got him. And yeah, they might have not envisioned him as a starter at the time, but when he's been there for years as a backup, learning under Russell Wilson in his heyday, and then learning that offense to a T, made him really comfortable. And then when he got a shot, he surprised everybody. So sometimes that happens too. So, I mean, like, for Geno, good on him. Like, he just continued to work hard and didn't give up, and finally found his niche in this league. So good for him. For as far as like Danny Dimes, they need to give up on him. There's two different sides to that, right? Like, you got some people that they still want to wait and see if this offense can come together and he can kind of get back into the limelight here and play much better. But then there's also the other side where people are like, well, we continually to see the same mistakes repeated over and over. We don't think it's going to get any better.
All right, we got tons of comments.
There we go. Mike Tackett goes, my point regarding the value comment was the higher the draft pick, the more money this year. First round picks ranged from $41.2 million at number 1 and dropped at $12.75 million at number 32. All right. I mean, that's fine. I mean, but here's the thing is, like, obviously the higher the pick, the more money you're going to have to, put into for that draft pick. But usually, I mean, not always, but usually that means a higher success rate on hitting on that pick too. So it's like, it's a checks and balances. Like, what do you want? Do you want to try to get a potentially better player, even though you have to give up a little bit more money? Or, should you just go with like the low amount of money and just kind of roll the dice and hopefully he can become a decent player? So it's kind of like, it's very, very iffy. So when it comes to value in terms of money, I'm really not looking into that. And I don't think none of these teams are looking into that really. Like they know what they're going to be expected to pay for each draft pick. John also said Giants can't develop quarterbacks. Eli was a rare breed. Every quarterback is a rare breed when they turn out and they actually perform. Like, that's the thing, too, is like, it's a crapshoot no matter what draft pick you have. It's not necessarily like, oh, well, you're picking in the top 5, you're definitely going to get a franchise quarterback. How many times have we seen that not pan out? Mm-hmm. We've seen number 1 overall picks, you know what I mean, get selected, and they turn out to be busts. They're not any good, so...
Right, and Eli Manning would happen to be just in that trade too with the
and
Chargers.
That's the thing,
so originally he got traded. He was a San Diego Charger before they became the LA Chargers. So, and he didn't want to play there. So they coming from the Manning breed too, he kind of figured it out. You know, that would be all right. And even though he had a couple rough first years, even again he eventually panned out. And he ended up being a good Super Bowl winner for you. And we haven't seen that with Daniel Jones so far.
No, and we're
but we got a lot of injuries though here with Daniel Jones too as well, and that's the thing of being mobile, because he's a lot more mobile than what Eli Manning was too. And we've seen the videos of Eli,
a little bit more mobile,
Eli
right?
scrambling though. Hey, we've seen Eli scramble though, and he gets it done, right?
You see when Eli starts to get it's like the train, like chugga chugga,
go.
Get the momentum going, chugga.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, what else we got here?
Mike Tackett also chimes in and says Eagles drafted Tyler Steen at number 64 for $5.75 million. At the end of the day, it's a business, and teams have to make tough decisions. Hashtag wine taste beer money.
All right, I like the hashtag. Okay, how about? Here we go.
Hashtag know it all.
Boom. Yeah. All right. So beer money. I think they got more wine money than the beer money here for them with some of these teams.
You're right. It is a business, and there's a lot of tough decisions that every club has to make every single draft, every single year.
But if they get their guy, they're definitely going to pay him to keep him, at least for a while, as long as they get, what
Bottom
they can.
line is when it comes to the draft, and I understand what you're going from a business sense in terms of money per pick, but teams, when they have their draft board and they have their value board and everybody's is different, and you know what I mean, and they get their guy, they are not thinking about how many picks they have in the 5th round or how many, like they have 3 second round picks. They know what they're going to spend. If they keep those picks and they draft those players, obviously their value chart in terms of draft prospects, they're going to be happy as hell, because as long as they're getting their guys as the draft goes, that's all they care about. The money thing, I get it. It is a business, and you're right. Like, it does come into the equation of certain teams that don't have a lot of money. Maybe they look to, like, to your point, maybe they look to trade out of the 2nd round and grab a couple of 5th rounders or something like that to kind of swap, and then they can spend a little less money but get a little bit more prospects, a little more shots at that draft pool. So I get it, but I don't think it's a critical point for a lot of these GMs where they're basically creating the formula for their draft based on the money sense all the time. Like, it does come into play. You're right, Mike, but I don't think it's a driving force for them.
Absolutely. So next up, we've got Joe, the headlines too that are also capturing the NFL right now. The Raiders. Finally, I think your answers have been prayed. Your prayers have been answered there, Joe. Here we go. He's finally gone. I mean, and after even all the players that, have turned against him, everything else, and I think it really took that Devontae Adams blow up a little bit in that last game to set it over the edge, too. The fact that, he was so upset in that last game. That here they go. They just fire everybody. It's a fire sale. Here you go. Josh McDaniels, the GM, Dave Ziegler, their offensive coordinator. And they've even come out now and said that they're even considering benching Jimmy G. And,
that's already happened.
Some of these other things. Yeah,
it's not a consideration anymore.
I'm just saying who they're figuring who they're going to start, though. They're trying to figure out, is it going to be Aiden O'Connell?
It's already Aiden O'Connell. He's already been announced as a starter.
Because it could be your guy, Brian Hoyer.
For going future. Because they got to find out, even if they don't stick with any of the coaching right now on the staff and they clean house completely, they have to find out from Aiden O'Connell what he is. Does he show any promise? Can they possibly continue with him going into the future? They got to find that out. So what better way to do it is the next 8 games, let's see what he can do. Is he gonna fall, or is he gonna rise to the occasion? So
Well, at
That
this
being
point,
said,
can't be any worse than Jimmy G right there, overthrowing freaking Devontae Adams a bunch of times. You guys were
The
back in
problem-
that game if he hits on any of those.
but here's the thing: is Jimmy G? He's just not a good quarterback, and he was camouflaged in San Fran. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, he's a winner. He's a winner." That's all well and good, but in San Francisco, it was camouflaged. All of his flaws were camouflaged because of Kyle Shanahan's creativeness on the offense, because of the players that were surrounding Jimmy G. He wasn't expected to throw it down the field that much. Because why? Because they did a lot of receiver screens, a lot of jet sweeps. They changed the plays up to the point that they were camouflaging Jimmy G's flaws. And here comes Jimmy G into the Raiders fold, and everyone wants to say, oh, well, they got their quarterback, they got this, that, and the other thing, and Jimmy G's not panning out because you're too you're in a shell of yourself of offense. When you're only looked at as an offense that just dinks and dunks, and you run the ball because you have Josh Jacobs, it's not going to bode well for you week in and week out. Defenses are not scared of the deep ball. They come up in the box, they stop the run, and then while they're up in the box, even if you throw a short pass, they're right there to defend it. So Jimmy G did not have a recipe to win in Vegas. Josh McDaniels was trying to make it work. And for Jimmy G, I've seen a lot of the plays where he doesn't even step into his throws. They're just all arm. And he doesn't have a strong arm to begin with. Mm-hmm. Only guys like Mahomes and Allen can kind of do that. You know what I mean? Where they can stand still and throw it. Mike Tackett just chimed in and said, who would have had the better career if that trade, quote unquote, didn't happen? Eli or Rivers? Think if Rivers would have stayed in New York, he would have had a better career than Eli did in New York. I think Eli would be a 500 quarterback as a Charger. This debate is always fun because I know people have said it before, and there was someone that kind of really dived deep into this a few years back, and they were like, well, if this actually happened, and Eli was a Charger and Phillip Rivers stayed a Giant, mm-hmm. they came to, after all this, like analytics and they looked into like personnel moves and stuff, they still said that both quarterbacks would have been successful. They still said that Rivers he would have won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. And they also said that possibly could have had a third or something like that. But that's all hyperbole. Like, Eli Manning still would have been a successful quarterback with the Chargers. I still feel like if he stayed there, I don't think if you kept the quarterbacks, without that trade and kept them where they were, that it would have been much different. I feel like both quarterbacks, yes, they're a little bit different from each other, but both quarterbacks were really good at what they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, again, you can't you don't know. You don't know what would have happened, but you would think that Eli would have been just as good, though, too, for the Chargers, because again, those teams had LaDainian Tomlinson, Vincent Jackson, had Antonio Gates, and then even on the defensive side, they're pretty good too. So, like I said, the only thing that kind of knocks Phillip Rivers here during that era, again, always was whenever they hit playoffs, they had to run into a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady every time. So who are you going to take in that one? You know what I mean? So right. it was just tough, and that's probably what ended up hurting some of his legacy when people say, like they just said even last week, that this Chargers team is reminiscent of the old Chargers teams,
right.
Which I won't even go there with this team yet because they're nowhere near those other teams because they didn't even make it as far as those other teams yet so far. So
yeah, I mean, that's
I pumped the brakes even on that.
So with the Raiders though, is what I'll say. So I didn't know this until today, but apparently Davante Adams has been having dinner with Mark Davis for the past 3 weeks and discussing where the Raiders were headed.
Is that TV dinners?
Mark Davis, no, they actually went to a real restaurant.
Oh, wow.
Mark Davis was also meeting with other players out of that locker room. And leading up to this point where the players were so frustrated, after they had that so-called locker room meeting with Josh McDaniels there, all the players expressed their distaste for the man in the locker room and basically were calling him out in the locker room. And that was before they faced the Detroit Lions Monday night. obviously we saw Monday Night Football and how bad it was for the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark Davis had one last meeting with Devontae. And I really believe that Devontae kind of spearheaded this to make it happen now rather than wait. Is after that meeting, Mark Davis very late announced at 10 p.m. On West Coast time that McDaniels is fired and Ziegler both. And then you hear the news like the next morning on the Northeast, everyone gets the news and they're like, wow, well, it's about time. I mean, but most of this was driven by the players, really. So this was a stance where Mark Davis, one, said, I can't take this anymore. I can't take the way we're losing is so embarrassing. It hasn't happened in a long, long time. We can't deal with it anymore. So he stuck with the players on this one. He no longer was with the coaching staff, was no longer there. So he made the choice, fires Josh McDaniels, looking to turn a new leaf next season. And then what's interesting, too, about this is the interim head coach that was announced, Antonio Pierce, the linebackers coach, not the D coordinator, Patrick Graham. Nobody else, not even like offensively, was named the head coach, but Antonio Pierce. So Antonio Pierce must hold a lot of respect from that roster, from those players, to kind of lead them into for the foregoing future here. And interim GM, Champ Kelly, a guy that around the NFL leagues has been seen as one of these guys that could land a full-time GM spot, now has even though it's the second half of the season, maybe he could show something as a GM to help this team win. So we'll see how it all kind of rolls out. But I know a lot of the Raider Nation out there is rejoicing and very, very happy that Mark Davis pulled the trigger on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And now for Josh McDaniels, do you think he
doesn't get a job?
He goes back to the Patriots again. It's like, all right,
so it's
Bill.
funny.
He goes back home. It's like, oh, here I am. And then Bill answers the door. He's like,
So
hey,
Bill
it's
got
me
that.
again. And he's like, hey, oh, you want to come back here? Want to help us out again? I already got an offensive coordinator, but I might find some place for you. I don't know what you want to do. And then he's just like, please, just let me do something. I'll be, equipment coordinator or
Ball
something
boy.
like that. Yeah,
Be a ball
something,
boy.
a water boy. And so who knows what his future might be.
Bill Belichick already got asked that question
Yeah, did he?
this morning.
Yeah.
And you know what his response was?
He goes home now to mommy, and he gets reprimanded, and that's the end.
Bill Belichick responded real simply, like, we're looking forward to Washington.
Looking forward to Washington. There you go.
That's it. Because that's what Bill does. He
what he
doesn't
does.
give you any answers.
Nope,
We're
absolutely.
concentrating on the team we're playing, and that's that.
Oh, boy. Yep.
Look
absolutely. So there you go.
for Josh McDaniels to be
So how
at
do you
a
think
Las
Antonio
Vegas
Pierce is going to
Walmart.
do for you guys, though? What do you think about that one, Joe? You think he even gets to interview next season for that job? Or
I think it'll be a formality, but I don't think he's going to stay. Much like what happened to Rich Bisaccia. I mean, but it's a very different situation. Antonio Pierce being thrown into the head coaching role. This is his chance to audition to, let's see what he can do. Let's see if the team will really kind of gather around behind him and play hard, because I watched some of the press conference for Pierce and Champ Kelly were both sitting side by side, and they were getting asked questions or what have you, the direction of the team and all that. And I'll tell you this right now. If I was a football player in that locker room, I'm 100% behind Antonio Pierce. Because here's a couple of reasons why. He's a former player. And usually former players do well on leading men because they know what it takes to be a football player day in and day out. They know what to expect every single week, and they know what the players are going through. So he's already got respect in that locker room because of him being a former player. And I feel like he's going to be that kind of a player's coach. I've seen him on the sidelines with just his linebacking core, kind of riling them up, getting them inspired to go out there and play. And he seems like a very fiery type of coach. So I think that's something that the Raiders need desperately. And let's see, how well he can do as a head coach. I feel like he's a player's coach, much like Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is a very smart coach. He's very smart, but he's a player's coach. He just knows how to lead men, how to motivate them. And I feel like that's what Pierce is. So I think it's good for the Raiders that they chose him and to go that direction for right now. But let's see what they could get accomplished, going forward. Now, it's an uphill battle. You got a rookie quarterback that you already announced is going to be your starter going forward. Expect a lot of mistakes. We saw that the first time that he actually started against the Chargers. Made some mistakes, but also made some nice throws. So let's see maybe if he can get better. And I feel like this offense, now they can't change the offense, right, Jim?
Mm-hmm.
But what they can do is call different plays in different situations that McDaniels might have not called. So that might stir the pot a little bit.
Sound like less of an asshole when you do it.
You know what I mean? Like, no, seriously.
Well,
but
not
that's all
blame
you
the
can
players
do.
too.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of was the problem. Is like, why are you running it on 3rd and 5?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But he was doing that.
What they even said, though, too, they're probably even looking for something. Yes, you said they run the same type of offense, though. But if somebody can give them even a spark, something different than what they've been doing, because the notion or the quotes have been out there already on Twitter and stuff like that from players that won't be announced who it is. That the offense is old school. It's too old. Other teams are doing different things, more flashy. They're behind the 8 ball and all this. They want to do what more of the 49ers are doing, blah, blah, blah. So they didn't like the way the offense was going. It was too bland. They wanted to do different things. So they're looking for somebody to switch it up even and something a little more modern. They said it was too old and just plain
right.
and not keeping up with it.
We joked about it last week about how they hired the wrong McDaniels. Mm-hmm. It should have been Mike that Mark Davis hired. Mm-hmm. And that right there is the difference. It's just what you mentioned. Josh McDaniels is more old school type of offense, where Mike is that innovative, modernized type of offense where it's very creative and they find different ways to utilize their players. That's what you could see maybe in the offseason. If they decide to go, whoever they decide to bring in for an offensive coordinator or a head coach, offensive-minded head coach or defensive-minded, they're going to look for that. I hope that Mark Davis looks for that modernized type of coaching, like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. We know that there's been names thrown out there. Eagles offensive coordinator Brian Johnson is going to be at like the top of the list for a lot of teams next offseason for a head coaching gig. Maybe maybe the Raiders look at him. You know what I mean? Maybe the Raiders look at Lions offensive coordinator. Brian Johnson or not Brian Johnson. I forgot. Anyway. But like there's candidates out there that are more modernized that they could bring in and then try to they don't necessarily need to rebuild besides quarterback, obviously, but they're a team that has talent, lost some talent this offseason because of the terrible decisions the old regime made. But it's a team that's like kind of like mediocre. They need some more big time players all over the place.
Oh, nice. All right. There you go. Let's talk about your Raiders here, Joe. And after that, let's just go right into it. We've got your decapitation of the week,
but not here. It's time for your decapitation.
All right. Tell everybody what the decapitation is this week, Joe.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, I looked. There's a lot of different hits and everything, but I really kind of picked up the Chargers hit. Justin Herbert got wailed by T.J. Edwards, just screaming through and blasting him right as he was trying to throw the ball. Wow. I mean, how about that? How about exposing yourself?
The one pressure that the Bears actually did get, and they caught it on camera, and it was against Justin Herbert, and it ends up being your decapitation of the week.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. There was another one. There was the Trevor Lawrence hit where the Steelers hit him as his mid-throw, but he actually completed his throw and got bent over on that hit, but it wasn't as hard a hit as the one on Herbert, so that's where it made it.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. It was a pretty good hit there. And, Joe, you know what? We talked about it last week, and they said it on the broadcast. I said that. You remember you said you can't use the finger as an excuse of why you're playing bad or where it's your non-throwing hand. Mm-hmm. And the broadcast crew, again, brought it up with the fact that he was even telling him, the discomfort and blah, blah, it's just still this and that. So he was really saying that it was his middle finger on his left hand was bothering so much much. That was the issue that he was having here.
Excuses.
And he's really taking it gingerly.
Excuses.
But that doesn't stop you from sliding, 1 inch, 1 yard shy of the first down when you need a first down to help win the game. So it's babying it a little too much. But
a little bit.
yeah, absolutely. So, all right, Joe, it's time for to go through our picks for Week 9. We are in Week 9 just like that, Joe. We're midway here.
Just past it. We're going past it.
Yep. Well, it's tough too now because we got an extra week here. So, nobody can finish 500 in this league anymore. So it's gonna be interesting moving forward. But here we are with the picks here, and all right, well, let's go. Let's
First
go.
one.
All right, next we've got the
Tennessee Titans at the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yep, absolutely. So what do we got?
Tennessee, this is interesting, right? Well, Will Levis gets his first start as a rookie last week, throws four touchdown passes, over 200 yards, passing. Was able to use his legs a couple times in that game and leads the Titans to a win. Pretty impressive for a rookie on his debut. Good for him. And now he's going to be facing a much better defense, though, in the Pittsburgh Steelers. In Pittsburgh, very tough place to play, harsh environment. Kenny Pickett, though, I'll say this about Kenny Pickett is he took a whooping last week. That guy, man, they said he was questionable leading up to this game tomorrow on a short notice. Like, I kind of expect him to play. But if he takes any kind of beating like he did last week, he might not play for long in this game. And we all know that Pittsburgh's offensive line isn't the best at protecting their quarterback. So this is going to be real interesting too, because the Titans defense, one of the better defenses. Like, they pull off that trade and got rid of Kevin Byard, but I still feel like this defense, especially up front, is after you all the time. So, with Pittsburgh, they got their defense that they heavily rely on to keep them in games. I'm going to go with the Steelers. I'm going to go with the Steelers at home because I feel like the rookie didn't get tested enough last week. I think now that he's going to play a much better defense, and Tennessee Titans' offensive line isn't the best either, I look for the Steelers to kind of wreak havoc there.
Yeah, I'd say it's safe to say with the Atlanta Falcons again here, and despite of what they've done to try and help out that defense here, they've been really underwhelming here on the defensive side of the ball, and you're giving guys like DeAndre Hopkins in this wide open, just leave them wide open here. Major mistakes here on defense, giving up those big plays.
Those are breakdowns in defense. That's what those are.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Tennessee Titans here, looks good for Will Levis here for his first start, but it's going to be tougher here in Pittsburgh. I think the big difference in that last game, everybody even wants to say, Pittsburgh lost a game in Jacksonville. Kenny Pickett got knocked out early out of that game. He was out of the game. I feel if he was able to stay in the game and that injury didn't happen, Pittsburgh still could pull out a victory in that one. I mean, Mitch Trubisky, we already know what Mitch Trubisky is. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that Kenny Pickett saying he's definitely going to be back into this game and playing, it's definitely going to be a lot closer here. But again, that defense against this type of that's against a rookie here going in and playing, it's going to be a little tougher for him. Is Minkah Fitzpatrick going to be able to play this game too, or is he?
No, I think he might be out.
All right, so that's going to be tough for him because he's a key player for them. But I think I'm going to roll with Pittsburgh at home too as well. We got the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of people, I think, are marking this on the calendar just because Tyreek Hill gets to go back to Kansas City and play against the Chiefs. Chiefs, shout out to Nathaniel McWhirter. He had brought up the fact that some people has picked even the Denver Broncos to win last week, and lo and behold, they do.
Couldn't believe it.
It could have been. I think that Patrick Mahomes was playing with the flu and stuff like that. Maybe that's part of his issue, and then he wasn't.
No,
doing
it's
it,
not.
But he looked terrible. He played terrible.
He had a bad game.
So
let's call it what it is. He had a bad game, and this is something that people keep making excuses up. Oh, well, he had an illness. Well, if you had that bad of an illness that was going to directly, affect him playing quarterback, he wouldn't have been out there. They would have had someone else out there. So, yes, he gives you a good chance to win, but if the illness was that much of a factor, then he wouldn't have been out there playing.
Well, he would have. Nothing would have stopped him. You know, he's a competitor. He's going to play no matter what. But we've seen guys like Michael Jordan play in the flu, and we
do
know that
really well.
it was a flu game. So
Really well.
It's tough here. So Miami against Kansas City here for me. Kansas City, I don't think, has the defense to compete with Miami. I think this is going to be a closer game here, but I think Miami has the offense to get it done against Kansas City. I know they want to fight back and pull out a victory here after getting embarrassed by the Denver Broncos, but I think Miami just has their number on this one. And like I said, I don't believe in Kansas City's defense.
I mean, obviously, like Miami has that high-powered offense, and they're getting a lot of players back from injuries this week. So that's going to play a huge factor in this game. Kansas City, listen, they're the team to beat until they get beaten by some of these teams. So for the Dolphins, this is their opportunity. Yes, they're going to be playing at 9:30 a.m. in Germany, I believe the game is. But I think Miami's going to get the best of them. Both teams are at a disadvantage in terms of taking these flights over there. Hopefully they go early enough to where they don't have too much jet lag during the game. But Kansas City, like you mentioned, like the defense, it's good, but it's weird. They're not as proficient as they were last year. And you could say the same thing about their offense is not the same as last year. So I kind of expect the Dolphins to kind of take advantage and steal a win away from the Kansas City Chiefs.
All right, here we go. Next up, we got the Atlanta Falcons and the Minnesota Vikings. Oh, man, I really want to jump ship on Atlanta because, again, I've gambled on them the last couple times, and they made me look terrible. But the fact that you're not sure at quarterback here and Kirk Cousins is down for Minnesota, I think I still have to err on the side of caution because also Atlanta is making the switch at quarterback as well. Mm-hmm. You know, they're not going to stick with Desmond Ridder anymore.
Nope, it's the Taylor Heineke show.
It's something that we've been asking for a while, Joe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he came into the game. Ridder got benched last week. Mm-hmm. Taylor Heineke came in, but the problem is that Heineke didn't have enough, ample time to kind of really help this team. We saw his stat line, no turnovers. He threw a touchdown, had like, I think over 150 to 200 yards passing, but it was too little too late. I think this is going to be huge for the Atlanta Falcons going forward in this season. They're still 500. They're 4-4. This could actually help propel them down the stretch to make a playoff run. It's possible now. Mm-hmm. You have a veteran quarterback now in Taylor Heineke, a guy that now is going to finally get first-team reps this week to get better chemistry with his receivers here. And I like what Atlanta is going to be doing going forward. It's about time they finally bench Desmond Ridder. It's time to give up on the project that is Ridder. So I like it where Atlanta's heading. There was a lot of miscues last week defensively for them, and that's what led to those wide open plays, big plays for them. Minnesota, they're going to have to start Jaren Hall. I got another rookie that is going to make his debut, and I think Atlanta's going to take advantage of it. So I'm going to go with the Falcons at home.
Alrighty, yeah, I'm going to agree with that one too as well. Falcons, Arizona Cardinals, and the Cleveland Browns here.
A little bit of a mystery.
Well, yeah, it is a bit of a mystery again because you can't count out the Cleveland defense on this one. So
Definitely
basically,
not.
It's how is Kyler Murray going to be able to play here against them? Is he going to be kind of the Kyler Murray of old and do something here for the Arizona Cardinals? But no matter what, Cleveland has been competitive. Even though putting P.J. Walker up in there, still not being terrible. So he's been able to keep the ship afloat, until Deshaun Watson here kind of comes. In a sense, like I said, I mean, some of these tougher competitions that they've even played against, if they had, a better quarterback in, they're pulling out of there with a win. They barely lost last week.
Right.
So I think against a futile team in the Arizona Cardinals, even though Kyler Murray coming back, I still don't think they have enough weapons or even on defense to compete with Cleveland. I'm going to go with Cleveland on this one.
Yeah, Arizona. Jonathan Gannon is doing his best. Bill Belichick type of scenario is he's playing off two different storylines here. Kyler Murray is completely healthy, ready to go. He's practiced fully. He's very excited. I guess he's fired up to kind of get this thing going, wants to get back into the starting lineup. But rookie Clayton Tune is also listed as a potential starter instead of Murray. So he's trying to play the game of like, well, you can guess which quarterback I'm going to try to start. There's been reports that Tune has a legitimate shot to start this week, and maybe Murray's held out another week. But I think it's hard-pressed when you have a guy who's practicing Kyler Murray, a guy that's been waiting to play, chomping at the bid, that you kind of shut him down. So I expect Kyler Murray to play despite all the other rumors. But even that said, this is a guy, again, coming straight into the starting lineup, not having a whole lot of practice time just this week, and you're expecting him to kind of, crank up the productivity on offense and return to, his heyday early in his career. So I like Cleveland's defense alone, because that's really what this whole team is about, is their defense is playing at such a high level that's what keeping them in games, and sometimes they score more points than their offense. P.J. Walker has been doing okay. He's also made a lot of mistakes that's kind of halted this offense, but I'm going to go with Cleveland at home and being able to get a win and get back on track here. Wow,
that was some in-depth analysis on this game, Joe. All right, next we got the Rams and the Green Bay Packers here, Joe. What do you think about this one?
This is interesting too, right? Green Bay, Jordan Love, we've seen him struggle mightily this year. Green Bay's defense, like one of their bright spots. I can't buy into Green Bay though. I just can't. I did after week 1, and I'm like, oh, they won their first game. Man, they looked better than I thought they would. That was against Chicago. So the Rams, they're also a team where we thought that this team was going to start to kind of get things back together, especially with Cooper Kupp back in the lineup, really start to take over some games, but they've struggled offensively against big-time teams. This is a team that they should beat. I expect them to beat them. I'm going with the Rams.
All right. Yeah, I think the Rams have been pretty competitive lately too as well. I mean, I thought they would put up more of a fight last week, but I think they're going to bounce back. Green Bay, again, I think is now coming down to earth of what we thought they might be, just a team growing with a young quarterback. I'm going to go with the Rams too as well on this one. And next up, we got the Washington Commanders and the New England Patriots here, Joe. Commanders, again, looks like they're selling out here to try and figure out what they can do here with picks of moving forward in the next season. They have been pretty competitive with what they can do. Here Sam Howell still learning his own, but New England at home is always tough. Yes, they did have a rough outing there with Mac Jones, a little bit, throwing an interception and feeling things out, but I wasn't really expecting them to win last week anyways. I think they can bounce back against this Washington Commanders team. I like the Patriots in this one.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. Isn't that the indicator as well when you get rid of 2 pass rushers, which are premium positions in the NFL? Who do you have? Like I don't think you can be able to rush the passer much except for maybe your D tackles. But I don't think that's going to be enough for them. Defensively, they took a big hit after the trade deadline. And offensively, we know that they struggle with protection as well. Mm-hmm. New England and Bill Belichick, they're going to try to attack those weaker areas. And we've seen this offense in the last couple of weeks. 1 week they looked really good, looked like they were getting back on track. The next week they looked pretty spotty. I'm going to go with the Patriots here at home to get a win over Washington.
All right, here. Next up, we got the Chicago Bears and the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans, again, trying to battle back here to see what they can do here to keep up in this competition for their division. Chicago, yes, they did go make the trade for Montez Sweat and stuff, but I think they are who they are, though. This is going to be a little tight, I think, early on, but I think the New Orleans Saints will pull out and pull out the lead here, especially at home. I like the Saints.
Interesting thing about Chicago is before the trade deadline, Jalen Johnson, their starting corner, requested a trade, and it never ended up happening. Now he's going to be remaining in Chicago. I wonder how that makes him feel going into this. Is he going to play all out for Chicago, or is he just going to kind of lay low here? New Orleans Saints, they've started to figure some things out offensively, it looks like. protection wise, they're changing some things to give Carr a little bit more time, and they're starting to utilize all of their assets, starting to really kind of take on some of these deep throws and connecting with guys like Shaheed last week. 3 huge catches down the field, and I like the Saints this week against Chicago because honestly, Chicago really doesn't have much of an answer for them.
All right, there you go. Mike Tackett's got a comment, Joe. What does he got to say?
Who is rebuild mode the most? The Falcons, Cardinals, or Washington? So who's in rebuild mode the most? I would say rebuild mode. I'd say Cardinals.
Cardinals, yeah.
I would say Cardinals because they got another tough decision too to make because they've already chosen Kyler Murray over the coaching that was there previously. I also will say this, leading up to the draft, they're going to have a high pick. They're going to have a high pick, probably top 5 by the end of all this. And do they stay with Kyler Murray now? Because he came off a major injury, now he's your starter, but now are you going to continue to stay with Kyler Murray because you're going to have an opportunity to take one of these top-end quarterbacks, or do you decide to continue to build around them? So that'll be interesting to watch for Arizona, what direction they go in.
Yeah, I agree with you. Same thing there. It's got to be the Cardinals. I was surprised that the Commanders went all in on just getting rid of those guys, and because I think they're closer than what like a rebuild type of deal.
But then again,
and Atlanta, I think they tried to go in and get the free agents to try and fill the void to make kind of something go somewhere, because last year they showed flashes that they can kind of compete, and they're hoping that Desmond Ridder can clean up some of the mistakes that he had, and it didn't really work. So they might start hitting the reset at this point too. So it's a tough one between the Cardinals, I think, and the Falcons, but I think it's definitely the Cardinals.
For the Falcons, it's not a reset, really. Like, you look at that roster and how they've been able to slowly build that team with a lot of youth now, a lot of impactful players. Just continue to do what you're doing. Just keep building. You're going to need a quarterback, like you alluded to.
Yeah.
But that's really all they're missing to kind of take a major step forward in the NFC. So for Washington, they got rid of 2 pass rushers, and I think that's more because the owner didn't want to pay them big dollars to keep them at the end of the year. So Washington, again, they need a few pieces. Now they're going to need pass rushers. And then they're also still going to need offensive line to kind of get that thing turned around. But I like Sam Howell as their starter going forward, at least for right now. I want to see what he can do.
Horrible.
I want to see what he can do with better protection, though. Until they get that offensive line figured out, they have weapons. So until they get that offensive line figured out, they have a running back in Brian Robinson Jr., then you can kind of make a claim on, like, is he the guy or not the guy? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I would say the Cardinals for sure.
All right, next we got the Seattle Seahawks and the Baltimore Ravens. This could be a good game here. Here we go. Seattle, again, has been playing pretty well. Despite I'd say Geno Smith is taking a step back from last year. But a
little bit, yeah.
One thing, I even said to somebody before when they said, man, Geno is not as good as last year. Well, when you have your best year ever out of your career.
That's right.
Where else are you going to go? I mean, it's hard to hit better than that. You can sometimes, but come on.
Sure.
You've already hit your mark. So, yeah, taking a step back isn't a big surprise for me. But going into Baltimore, it's always tough to play. Those guys look like they're hitting their stride. I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens on this one. Mm-hmm. And you see Odell Beckham Jr. blown up on the sideline again just because he doesn't get involved in the offense. They win the game convincingly, and upset that he's not getting targets.
Well, you went to the wrong team. Where do you think you're going to get targets from? Lamar Jackson.
I would have tried to trade him already. I mean, if I'm them, because if you're not using him that much, then why not?
Honestly, Lamar, you're not going to get nothing for him, though. Guy that's going to be 30-plus years old as a receiver.
Somebody probably would want it at this point.
Yeah, but you
can't tell me that one of those other contenders wouldn't grab him anyway.
But you're not going to get value. That's the thing. Is like if you're thinking, if you're right. Mm-hmm. Like if that's what you're looking for, if you want to move on from him, get a 7th rounder and move on from him. I mean, sure, fine. Mm-hmm. But if Odell himself to come up like, oh, I'm frustrated, I'm not getting enough targets. Look at the team you went to. Mm-hmm. Just because you wanted to play with Lamar Jackson, you look at that offense in history with Lamar as a quarterback, they don't throw a lot. They don't. And when he does throw, it's usually when plays break down, he throws it to Mark Andrews is his number one guy.
Yep.
So if you were going there intentionally to say, oh, well, I'm going to have a really good year in Baltimore, I'm going to catch over 1,000-yard receiving and all that. No. You went to the wrong team. That's your own fault. That was your fault. You chose to go there. He could have went anywhere else that was looking for receiver help, and he chose Baltimore. I feel like that's on him.
Yeah. All right.
So
what do you
Seattle
think? You
Seattle
gonna
and
do
Baltimore,
Baltimore?
man, Seattle Seahawks in that defense now. They add Leonard Williams to that team. Wow, that makes him really impactful. The one key that I'll say about this game is it's going to be about Geno. It's going to be about him. Can he, stay calm in the pocket? Can he make some create extra time with his feet when needed and distribute the football accurately and on time? That's going to be the critical thing for Seattle going forward. They got to score more points than they did last week to keep this thing going. And you're playing a very, very stingy defense in Baltimore Ravens. I like the Ravens at home. I think this is going to be one of those things where Seattle's not only traveling across the country here, but they also got to play a very, very tough team and that plays very well at home. I'm going to Baltimore.
All right, here we go. We're in agreement so far all the way down the board, Joe. Next up, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Houston Texans again. Houston, what happened? I'm not really terribly shocked that they end up losing that game, but because it's kind of a thing that you would figure. They played up to a lot of this other competition, but they were in a close one last week. They could have ripped it out, but it doesn't really surprise me though as well here. I think they just kind of got brought back down to earth a little bit here. Carolina was due for their win though. They were due, and that was another one that Nathaniel McWhirter actually called out himself as one of the upsets that he was going to pull out, and he was right on that. So kudos to him. Houston, they do play tougher at home, but Tampa Bay, I think they're frustrated at this point too. They really had an opportunity, I think, to get back into that game last week. Because Buffalo even dangled it out there for them, Joe. They were right there, and Tampa still had a shot.
That was a closer game
than it should have been.
Than I think people thought it was going to be.
It was going to be, yeah, absolutely. So I think Tampa Bay is going to rear back against in Houston. I think they're still going to be competitive for a little bit, but they are who they are. And I think Tampa Bay, still has a good shot to do something here with them. I like the Buccaneers on this one. One thing about that game, though, too, is it brought up another thing. I forget who it was, but they brought up the fact that when you do the Hail Mary, how come they should change the rules and not let it be as loose as it is on the Hail Mary throw, because there are multiple grabs and penalties that are going on with a pass interference right there that was a crucial thing for Tampa Bay, because they blocked out, basically double team and blocked out their one tight end and stopped him from getting into the end zone. Just knocked him to the ground. Any other play in the whole game, and that's easily pass interference.
Right.
Why just in that particular point is it not? You know what I'm saying? You can't
That's on
play
the officials.
situational like that. Well, I know. And that's what I'm saying. When you're talking about a game where we don't know what a catch is right now, and they're trying to describe it down to the T. Well, it's making this particular move, but then
Catch is a catch.
99% of the game, it's called a pass interference, but not during the last second where there might be an iota or the last chance of somebody getting a Hail Mary throw, and they let the defense manhandle the receivers.
No, that's on the officials. This has happened before. But it's also been the other way. They've had in the history of the NFL, they've definitely thrown flags for either pass interference, offensive, defensive, whatever. It's happened before. So this, to me, that play, that game, that is squarely on the shoulders of the officials for not throwing the flags when they should have. And it's
I think,
simple.
then the NFL should have called them out and said,
Okay.
hey, they messed up on this.
They
we got to
apologize.
look into that.
There you go.
No, I get that there, but then looking forward, I think they need to move forward next season.
What do you want them to do?
Make sure that it's called.
How can the NFL make sure it's called? Because the problem
what do you
is,
think they do it the same thing now with defensive holding? And what do you think you've seen even this season?
Yeah,
You've seen more of that.
Mhm.
Just because they're focusing. We're going to focus more on calling this.
right.
So they're going to focus more on calling that.
They do it every year. They come up with something else that they're going to focus on.
I know.
So
and then they call it
it's
more.
no different.
I know, and they're going to call it more then.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing is like it doesn't matter year to year because they're going to choose what they want to focus on every single year. Now, next year, it could be they're going to focus on those Hail Mary things.
Yeah.
And then they're going to see all kinds of penalties that probably shouldn't be called because they're focusing on it. They're coming down on it. But the refs are always going to continue to screw up. We know that. That's something that we can count on.
Yeah, definitely.
So Tampa Bay and Houston, Buccaneers are just held back by Baker Mayfield. That's really what it comes down to. Their offense, it's how well he plays. It's how well he plays is how much success that team altogether is going to display. So Tampa Bay going into Houston, I feel like this is a comeback for Houston. I like what the Houston has been able to do. They've been able to compete against anybody that they faced up to this point. I was actually shocked that they lost to Carolina because I thought they were a lesser opponent than Houston. But I'm going with Houston in this one.
All right. Next, we got the Colts and the Carolina Panthers. Panthers fought hard, and they end up pulling out a victory here against the Houston Texans team that, I thought, again, we kind of underlooked this team, thought riding high on what they were doing, starting to believe in what they have. Carolina, I think that's as far as it goes, though. I believe in the magic here of Minshew, so I'm going to go with the Indianapolis Colts on this one. And I think they really got to get out and get Jonathan Taylor going early and keep balance, because I think that's what ended up happening last week. They were kind of getting onto the one-sided part to where they had to neglect the run a little bit and go past too much. And once you have Minshew in there, that's one of the partial of the mistakes you can do.
What's interesting about Indianapolis is that they keep toying with this whole running back by committee approach. You have Jonathan Taylor healthy and back, and Zach Moss is still a major factor in this offense. Don't get me wrong. I don't mind Zach Moss going in there and spelling for Taylor once in a while or changing, like the change of pace type of back. But when they're flat out splitting time up to this point, Taylor's healthy. Give the guy the ball, because when he had opportunities with the football in his hands, he was able to make things happen. And then you bring in Zach Moss, and Zach Moss is like, he's Zach Moss. Like he's an average running back and plays up to his standard. Taylor needs to get the ball more, whether that be receiving, giving him the ball in between the tackles, outside the tackles. That's something that I look forward to seeing in this game against Carolina. I didn't think they should have won last week. They won by a field goal at the end. I'm not buying into this team all of a sudden getting it together and starting a win run here. But I'm going to go with the Colts going into Carolina and getting the win.
All right, here we go. Next up, we got the New York Football Giants and the Las Vegas Raiders here, Joe. Holy crap. It's our teams are playing each other,
yes.
And they are both just terrible at this point. But I don't know what to expect in this one. You got a rookie quarterback that's going to be there.
Daniel Jones is going to be there.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be bad. Just because, oh, man.
You think so?
It depends. Yeah, because I don't know how well our defense is going to play. Because Vegas, they play better at home, and I know Max Crosby is going to get in there past Evan Neal every single time.
You think so?
Absolutely.
What side does Evan Neal? He's right tackle?
He's right tackle. Yes. Yeah,
Max it depends if Crosby's there, because he goes on both sides.
But yes, he will. He will go around him.
They move him around.
Well, it doesn't matter if Andrew Thomason isn't on the other side. That's even better too for him. I think he's just going to feed.
Who, Thomas? I think Andrew Thomas gives him a better competition than Neal.
Well, absolutely, if he plays, yes.
Well, here's what you're going to like. The injury report says this: Evan Neal and Andrew Thomas, they both say, has an opportunity to start. An opportunity.
Everybody has an opportunity.
No. It's an opportunity. May or may not. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
I'm very really broad
looking
on that.
Towards the Vegas Raiders on this one. But, again, starting a young quarterback, not sure, but I know Daniel Jones is going to get sacked nonstop here. You know what?
Well, here's my thing to you, Jim, is you talk about Crosby. Mm-hmm. Giants, you only have to worry about Crosby. That's it. The rest of the Raiders' defensive line doesn't do much. I don't care if you got a double team, triple team, whatever you got to do. Have a running back, a tight end, and a right tackle on them. Mm-hmm. Do it. Take them out of the game. If you do that, your offense is going to have time. Mm-hmm. And then if you look on the other side of it, Kayvon Thibodeau last week had a really good game. I think he's going to repeat it this week. You're playing a Raiders offensive line that is so putrid and can't pass protect or run block that I think the Giants' whole D-line is going to eat. Dexter Lawrence included. Like, I'll tell you this right now. I know that both teams are going to struggle in this game offensively for different reasons. But I'm going with the Giants in Vegas. I like the Giants in Vegas because you got to face it. You're playing a rookie quarterback in Aiden O'Connell. You don't have a very good offensive line that you're facing as a Giants D-line. Like, you should be able to eat as just the D-line. You shouldn't even have to blitz. We know Wink Martindale's going to put a lot of pressure on the rookie, confuse him, change lineups defensively. And then offensively for the Giants, yes, they're still beat up on offensive line, but honestly, you just need to worry about Crosby, and that's it. So if you can manage to limit him, slow him down, to give you enough time to get rid of the football quickly, I like the Giants in this one.
All right. I don't know. It's tough. I think maybe you sold me on it, but
no, pick Vegas.
I just don't agree.
Go ahead. You can pick Vegas.
I just don't agree on this one. But.
Pick Vegas.
All right, here we go. Next, we've got the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. This is going to be a good showdown here. You know, Dallas has been playing a lot better here. They're going to face Philadelphia in Philly. It's tough to play there. Again, Jalen Hurts, it all depends on how he performs here. Dallas, they really need to step up. Philadelphia has shown that they do have a chink in their armor and they can be beat. Dallas is playing its best ball so far right now, but against teams like this, they need to really step up their game. Seeing it as though it is in Philly, I'm going to give the nod to the Philadelphia. If it was in Dallas, I'd go otherwise.
I'm going Philly. It's plain and simple with me. Like the Dallas Cowboys here, and here's the thing: the recipe to beat them is simply do what people should be doing to Max, is double teaming Micah Parsons, double teaming him, keep him out of the game. Because I've seen that when offenses do that to the Cowboys, their defense, they'd like to play this cover 3 zone, cover 2 zone, where you can find holes in the defense as long as you can stop that pass rush for Micah Parsons, and you have time to just sling the ball wherever you want because you find openings in the defense. Because Dexter Lawrence on the other side just simply he's not worth the money they're paying him. And for the Cowboys offensively, that's a harder task to stop because they have a lot of weapons that Dak Prescott obviously loves to throw to CeeDee Lamb. And CeeDee Lamb is very difficult to defend unless you have the capability to play man, which the Eagles do. Eagles have the secondary to play man. They can still rush the passer with their front four. I like Philly in this one.
All right, next up, we got the Buffalo Bills here for Sunday Night Football against the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe. Buffalo, again, not looking the same here. You're really keeping teams tight in this one. They pulled out a victory last week, but barely. You know what I mean? I just don't think they're looking really good right now on point. Can't get the offense going unless it's Josh Allen doing something. Cincinnati, they're burning. They're burning right now. I like what Joe Burrow's doing. It seems like he's hitting his stride again, getting involved. And they're getting Joe Mixon involved. That's the thing. Keep balance. Joe Mixon running, and then it opens up the pass, and then boom, there you go. But teams also spreading it out, leaving a lot of green up there, and Joe Burrow's not afraid to run off and take off on you too as well. Cincinnati playing at home. It's tough in the jungle there. I'm going to go Cincinnati on this one.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills, we've seen glimpses of this team returning back to what they were last year, like offensively. We've seen Josh Allen start to make some plays where you're like, okay, that's Buffalo. There they are. They're scoring points. They're doing what they need to do. But then we've also seen them this year where it's like they're a shell of themselves. So to this point, like I don't think we've seen the full-fledged Buffalo Bills like we were used to last year. And because of it being so like lopsided in terms of production from last year to this year, I can't fully trust them anymore. Like I thought I could in the beginning of the year. I'm like, oh, it's Buffalo easy. They should win this game. They should win that game. And they've lost those games. So this game is going to be a very good game to watch. I'm interested to see how Buffalo reacts going up against Cincinnati, which is a team that most likely they're going to have to face in the playoffs. With the Bengals starting to turn things around here. I like what Cincinnati's doing right now. They're doing what pretty much on the show what we've been saying to do. And as long as they keep following suit, I think the Bengals win this one.
All right, next up, finally, we've got Monday Night Football on the Los Angeles Chargers and the New York Jets, Joe. The Jets have been able to play spoiler for a couple of these bigger teams. They beat a lot of these
They've done a good job,
upper
man.
echelon ones in that defense, really getting it done. It was a little too close here, though, for the New York Giants when they played them here and went to overtime. The Giants actually had that game.
Game's ridiculous.
That game was tough to watch, Joe. It was nuts.
It
And
was
the fact that it even
amazing.
went into overtime, we're like, God, shoot me now. Why
was
is it
amazing.
just going? And oh man, the missed field. But don't bring it back up again. Jesus, stupid Giants. God damn it. This is why I pick against them all the time, though, man. All right, the Chargers, Jets. Jets at home is gonna be tough, but I believe what the Chargers can do here, even against this defense, and Zach Wilson, I don't think has enough to beat the Chargers here, especially the way they played just against the Giants. I'm gonna go with the Chargers here in primetime.
I gotta say, the Chargers have been very disappointing this season. There's teams that they definitely should have handled and beaten, and they haven't. And then there's other times where you're like, well, maybe this will be a good game. Maybe they end up losing this one, and they end up surprising everybody. So they're another team for me this year that have been up and down. They're 3-4 right now, looking to go 500. Going into New York, another tough place to play. And I love the Jets defense. Like they're healthy, and that I think is going to be the difference between this game is Chargers offense versus the Jets defense and what's going to be the outcome of that. I'm going to go and stick with the Jets at home in this one, beating the Chargers.
All right, there you go. And that's our picks for week 9. So another exciting one. A week where I don't even know what's going to happen. We can be completely wrong.
I don't think we're ever going to know this whole season what's going to happen.
Yeah, I know. And somebody had said in one of our group chats too, has said this is probably their favorite season of all, just because it's so crazy and we don't know what to expect. So, come playoff time, who knows what we'll see at the end of this one? But it's sad to see some of these teams though lose their starting quarterbacks in fashion. The injuries that have happened this season too as well. A lot of injuries. Changing the trajectory of some of these teams.
There was a stat that the NFL showed, and it was just like a list of quarterbacks last week that all got injured, that all either left the game or were banged up or whatever. Yep. And it was like 6 or 7 quarterbacks were just pummeled last week. And you got to wonder, like, longevity wise, like for this rest of this season, if you're to lose anybody, like Kirk Cousins, unfortunately, he's done for the year. The Vikings lose him, their franchise quarterback. Mm-hmm. If anything is to happen going forward, we talked about it in the offseason, it is such a catastrophic loss to lose a starting quarterback that it completely derails the rest of your season. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that's not the case for Minnesota. Maybe they can try to keep things going with, being able to run the ball and their defense. But it's a very, very tough thing to overcome. But thanks, everybody out there, for watching. Thanks for tuning in. We have a few people that kind of just started watching. But we are done with our show. If you could do us a huge favor, though, if you could keep showing us support and helping us grow this thing on YouTube, head over to YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, let you guys know when we go live. And, of course, you can always follow us and take us along for the ride with you anywhere you get your podcasts.
All right, absolutely. That's it for us, and we'll see you guys next time.
Join us next week from 8 till 10 Wednesday nights for more Football on the Know with Jim and Joe.